Welcome back to my channel. Google just lost a 4.7 billion battle against Europe, and here's why it matters. Imagine building the world's most popular smartphone operating system, giving it away for free, helping billions of people access the internet, and then being told you owe 4.7 billion because you made it too successful. That's exactly what just happened to Google. After fighting in court for nearly 8 years, Google has officially lost its final appeal against one of the largest antitrust fines in history. Europe's highest court ruled that Google illegally used Android to strengthen its search engine monopoly, meaning the company must pay a massive 4.1 euro billion or about 4.7 billion dollars. But here's the bigger question. Did Google really break the rule, or is Europe simply trying to keep big tech under control? So let's all break it down in this video. To understand this case, we need to go back to 2018. At the time, Android had become the world's dominant mobile operating system. Today, Android powers around 70% of smartphones worldwide. But there's one important thing many people don't realize: Android itself is open source. Any manufacturer can technically use Android for free. So, why did regulators have a problem? Because Google wasn't just giving manufacturers Android, it was also offering access to something far more valuable: the Google Play Store. Without the Play Store, an Android phone becomes much less useful. No Gmail, no Google Maps, no YouTube, no Play Store apps. Manufacturers desperately wanted access. And according to the European Commission, Google used that leverage to protect its search business. So, what was Google actually accused of? The EU said Google imposed several conditions on phone manufacturers. If companies wanted the Play Store, they also had to pre install Google Search and Google Chrome. In some cases, manufacturers were allegedly discouraged from selling phones running modified versions of Android, often called Android forks. According to regulators, these agreements made it nearly impossible for competing search engines or browsers to gain meaningful market share. Think about it like this: imagine buying a new phone. When you turn it on, Google search is already there, Chrome is already there. Most people never bother downloading an alternative. That's called the default effect. And regulators argued Google used that psychological advantage to maintain dominance. Now, what was Google's defense? Google completely disagreed. The company argued that Android actually increased competition. The reasoning was simple. Android is free, manufacturers don't have to pay licensing fee. That allowed companies like Samsung, Xiaomi, Oppo, Motorola, and many others to compete against Apple's iPhone. Google also said consumers are free to install any browser or search engine they want. Want Firefox? Download it. Want DuckDuckGo? Install it. Nothing stops users from switching. Google also pointed out that Apple bundles Safari and other Apple apps with every iPhone. So why should Android be treated differently? Why Europe didn't agree? The European Commission wasn't convinced. The argument wasn't about whether users could switch, it was about whether competitors ever had a fair chance. Economists have known for years that most consumers rarely change default settings. If billions of phones arrive with Google search already installed, Google keeps receiving billions of searches automatically. That generates advertising revenue, which helps Google invest even more, make it even harder for rivals to compete. Regulators believe this created a self reinforcing cycle of dominance. They said violated European competition law. So, the 8 year legal battle, Google immediately appealed the original decision in 2022. A lower EU court agreed with most of the Commission's finding. However, it slightly reduced the original fine from 4.34 euro billion to about 4.1 euro billion. Google wasn't satisfied, so the company appealed again, this time to the European Court of Justice, the highest court in the European Union. This week, that court dismissed Google's final appeal. The judges upheld the reduced fine, effectively ending the legal battle. Google has now exhausted its legal options in this case. So, what was Google's response? Following the ruling, Google said the decision failed to recognize the company's investment in keeping Android open, interoperable, and free. The company also noted that it had already changed its Android licensing agreements after the original 2018 ruling to comply with European requirements. In Europe today, when users set up many new Android phones, they often see a screen asking them which engine they'd like to use. Those changes were introduced because of this very case. And why this matters beyond Google. This isn't really about one company, it's about who controls the digital economy. Europe has spent years trying to limit the power of big tech. Google, Apple, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, they have all faced increasing scrutiny. The Android ruling is just one part of a much larger effort. More recently, the European Union introduced the Digital Markets Act, a sweeping law designed to prevent dominant technology companies known as gatekeepers from unfairly favoring their own services. Google is also facing ongoing scrutiny under those newer rules. In other words, even though this Android case is finally over, Google's regulatory challenges in Europe are far from finished. Will this hurt Google financially? Probably not very much. $4.7 billion sounds enormous, but Alphabet generates hundreds of billions of dollars in annual revenue. The company had already accounted for a fine year ago while the appeal was ongoing. So, financially, this isn't a devastating blow. The bigger impact is strategic. Every major antitrust loss creates legal precedents. Future regulators can point to this case when investigating other business practices, and investors know more regulation could eventually affect how Google bundles products, promotes its services, or expands into new markets. After nearly a decade, one of the biggest legal battles in tech history has finally come to an end. Google has officially lost its final appeal, but the story doesn't end here. As artificial intelligence, app stores, search engines, and digital ecosystems becomes even more powerful, governments around the world are asking a bigger question: how much power should one technology company really have? And that's a debate that's only just getting started. So, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.